Good evening and welcome, everyone. My name is Amber Miller. I'm a cattle producer from Spring Creek, Nevada, where my husband, 2 children, and I raise Simmental cattle and Plains buffalo. I currently serve as the Region 6 representative for NCBA's Young Beef Leader program. This evening's webinar is presented by NCBA's Young Beef Leaders as part of the Cattlemen's webinar series through NCBA's Producer Education Department, which is centered on educational opportunities for young producers. NCBA's Young Beef Leader program is focused on education, engagement, networking, and development of the next generation of beef industry leaders through engagement with NCBA's state and breed-affiliated organizations and incorporation into industry meetings and events. I serve alongside 7 regional representatives. Jacob Nias from Georgia in Region 2, Keith Nance from Oregon, Matt Hunt, Colorado, Region 5, April Bonds from Texas in Region 4, Chris Jeffcoat from Pennsylvania, Region 1, Jacqueline Wilson from Nebraska, Region 7, and Ben Novak from Iowa in Region 3. As a participant, your line will be muted, but feel free to type in questions in the chat box on your screen, and at the end of the presentation, questions will be moderated to our presenters by Sarah Arp, an NCBA staff member. If you have trouble with your technology, or if you are joining us only for the audio, the webinar is being recorded and will be available in a few days at beefusa.org. Bridging the generational gap among ranch families is presented by this evening's speakers, Donald, Kelly, and Tucker Brown. The R.A. Brown Ranch was founded in 1895 and is headquartered in Throckmorton, Texas. In this evening's webinar, the Brown family will discuss how family dynamics, business operations, and industry engagement have all been a part of the equation in sustaining the ranch for over 100 years. Donald?
Thank you, Amber. All right, it is a pleasure to be here with everyone tonight. Kelly and Tucker and I are all here and excited to share with you some things about bridging the generational gap. And with that, we want to talk, first, we want to kind of give you some history of where we've been. Then we want to talk about kind of where we are in our family's generational transfer that's occurred here over the last 3 years. And then also we want to hopefully talk some about where we're headed from here. And so, Josh, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, very good. And so with that, that's, I guess, about a 10-year-old picture of our family now. But as you can see, there are a lot of them. Kelly and I are the 5th generation now to own and manage the R.A. Brown Ranch. We have 2 sons, Tucker and Lanham Brown. As Amber mentioned, we've been a family business since 1895. And as we look at the ranching business, you know, I know there are a lot of people, you know, especially as we look at young producers at challenging. Kelly and I are in our late 40s, and, you know, we're looking at how can we grow our business. And in this capital-intensive business, it can be challenging. And as I look at it, it's not about where you came from as much as about where you're headed. And that's what we want to talk about tonight. So with that, just a little bit of history. We are in the Red Angus business. We produce 3 breeds of cattle, sell about 800 bulls a year. That's Red Angus as well as Black Angus. and Sim-Angus are the three breeds that we produce and market with our team. Our mission is very simple, and that is that we are continually striving to improve the efficiency of converting God's forage, and I'm talking about that grass out in those pastures that you and I and chickens and hogs cannot utilize. Improve the efficiency of converting that forage into safe, nutritious, and great-tasting beef to better feed his people. And that's why our family is in the cattle business, and that's our passion. It's what we love. It's what we do. And Kelly and I are now, as I said, the fifth generation. Our number one goal is quite simple, and that is we want to improve the profitability and the sustainability of our customers. We have been a family business for many generations now, and, you know, I do believe that cattle country is a great place to grow families. So as we start back with where we were back in the late 1800s, 120 years ago, this is the letterhead from our start in Texas, down in the kind of southeastern part of the state. Find it interesting that, you know, raising horses, cattle, and mules, and interesting that it's called polled Angus bulls. I don't know if there were horned ones at the time, but moving from that location, we moved to the Fort Worth Stockyards, where my great-grandfather managed one of the first commission companies at the old historic Fort Worth Stockyards in the early 1900s. From there, my family moved out west of Fort Worth, 2.5 hours to Throckmorton, Texas. This is the original homestead. In 1903 is where we came to Throckmorton County and actually brought the first Hereford cattle to Throckmorton County. This is a picture of my grandfather, R.A. Brown, and this picture is actually on the cover of the Hereford Journal as well as the Texas Cattleman's Magazine. So a lot of history here as you look at the rolling plains of Texas, a lot of history in the horse business as well, as my grandfather was one of the founders, and this picture taken of the American Quarter Horse Association. This picture of him was taken in the 1920s, mid-1920s. Now, as we look at our family business, I want to share with you about how it has grown, and it's more than just one piece of ground, one ranch, because we have grown through each generation, and I think that's an important part as you look at it. And one thing we want to share is that we sure don't claim to have all the answers, or maybe even very many answers, as we look at bridging that generational gap. But tonight we want to kind of share with you where we've been and the process that through generations our family's gone to, and I hope that we can shed some light on things that will help you start with your family business in whatever stage you may be, and start some conversations of how to bridge that gap. One of the things as we've grown, my grandfather there on the left married Valda Thomas, and she was from a ranching family as well, and so merged ranching families. One of the neat things is my grandfather was one of 5 children, and one of the things that they had to do and during really tough times economically, the bank didn't want to loan them money to continue their operating note. And so they had to, Josh, I've lost screen here. Can you see it on your end?
No, we can't.
Okay, hang on here just a second. I apologize. Kelly, let's go in this other room. Yeah, we'll keep talking here as we transition and get the slides back up again. I don't know.
Thank you for your patience. We'll get this resolved here shortly.
There, it's coming back up. Okay, so one of the things is through, can you see it there now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Is they fell on hard financial times, as many of us in the ranching business do from time to time, and they all his sisters had to end up deeding their part of the ranch to my grandfather in order to have enough collateral to borrow money for an operating note. That got them through the challenging times. And one of the things that we see as essential is that the family is above all. And at the end of that time period, my grandfather then deeded all of that land back to his sisters in equal parts. My grandfather had one son and one daughter. This is my dad, Rob Brown, as a young lad, and he grew up. At the age of 29, my dad lost his father. And one of the interesting things is that, like so many families in the ranching business, his dad and he and his dad didn't always see eye to eye on everything. My grandfather was more traditional, my dad more progressive, and yet those progressive ideas were squelched for many years. In the drought of the 50s, we bought some land in Colorado and moved the majority of our herd to Colorado, and my grandparents would spend summers there. And we would go and spend a couple of weeks in August there with our grandparents, and it was during that time for about 2 weeks that my dad and my granddad agreed on more things about being progressive and starting a planned crossbreeding system and doing some of those things that my dad, being the first in the Brown family to ever graduate from college, wanted to use that science and the knowledge and the things that he had learned and gained, and they agreed on more things over that 2-week period. And at the end of that 2-week period, my grandfather had a massive heart attack and died. My father, at the age of 29, took over the ranch, and I'm confident today that our ranch in our family is where it is today because my dad received his father's blessing. And I believe that's very important as we go from generation to generation. And not to say that we all have to agree on everything that we're doing or going to do, but I do believe it's important to share your blessing with your children. And we'll talk more about providing those opportunities and where to from here. My dad has always been passionate about cattle and about horses. He served as president of very active in NCBA, served as president of the American Quarter Horse Association as well, and married Peggy Donald Brown, and that's my mom there on the left. And she also from a ranching family, and my dad bought out his sister, my mom bought out her brother, and we continued to grow the ranching business. And here are 3 generations of the R.A. Brown Ranch family. I'm the little guy there in the middle on the bottom, the youngest of 4 kids there with our grandmother. And so as our family has grown, it's really grown a lot. You know, we all married wonderful spouses. We grew our families larger and larger. And so now there's 4 in the 5th generation, 17 in the 6th generation, and 6 now in the 7th generation. Some of you may recognize this picture. David Steckline took this picture. It's actually his most famous print. It was taken here on the ranch. That's Tucker, our oldest son, who's on the line with us tonight, and we'll hear from in just a little bit, second from the left. Those youngsters have grown a lot, and this picture actually has some age to it now as well, but that's the kids. As we talk about it, when we look at generational transfer, one of the things that I believe is important is that, one, the children grow up and work on the ranch. And they can sit on the fence for a long time. The question is, how quick are we going to get them off the fence or off the sidelines and into the game, off the fence and an active part of the family business? As we look at transitioning family businesses, it's also important to think about the team members that we work with. the gentleman on our left, on the left of the photo there, is George Self. George worked for our family as a second-generation foreman on our ranch. His dad worked for our family for my grandfather for 44 years. George worked all but 6 months of his life for our family in his 76 years of life. And so as we've transitioned, keeping those employees and working with them and making them an active part of the business and the transition has been one of those things that we've always tried to keep in mind. Now, as we go, that's kind of history of where we've been. I'll give you a little bit about where we've gone the last 3 years, going from my dad's generation onto ours. But before I do, let me just share that one of the unique things that my parents, actually great-grandparents, did is they deeded the ranch to 3 generations. And so my grandfather and my dad actually never owned the ranch. They had a working lifetime estate in the ranch. And here over the last 3 years, Dad has passed that ranch on to the 4 in our generation. And as we go into ranching, as we look at family generational transfer, I believe there's a real reality, and that is that none of us have to change. I think that's a given. We do not have to change, but we will have to compete with those who do. And so I hope that, again, our conversation tonight will help lead to some discussions to create a very healthy transition of your family's business, while at the same time we want to help you accomplish those things because Mom and Dad's goal, as they came to us 3 years ago, was to keep the ranch in the family and the family in the ranch. And as we look at that, as we look at estate planning, my parents started estate planning about 30 years ago, and they put R.A. Brown Ranch into a limited family partnership. And so the 4 of us in my generation actually owned a huge majority of the ranch for many years, for about 27 years, even though Mom and Dad were the president of the company. They made all the calls, and we submitted all of that to them. We signed a document every year that we would not take money out of the business, and Mom and Dad could run it and that was an agreement we all made in the beginning. But Mom and Dad's, like I say, their main focus in doing that was to help prevent our government from taking roughly half the ranch in taxes because of the estate tax, or the death tax as it's commonly referred to. So 30 years ago, they started with an estate planning tool. They did that by finding counsel, finding an accountant that knew the laws, and I encourage you to do that with your family today, to get somebody that knows more about estate planning and say, what are some things that we can do to keep our ranch in the family and our family in the ranch? One of the things, my mom was my Sunday school teacher, and she instilled in all of us something that I think is very important. And, one of those is 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 13, and these 3 things remain: faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. And as we went through our family transition, it was that scripture that kept coming to my mind as we worked together. Now, as you look at bridging that generational gap, there are a lot of different ways to do it. We're sure not claiming to have the best way, but the way that our family has done it has proven to be very successful, and so we hope that you can glean some insight from that. What we did is Mom and Dad 3 years ago said, all right, we're going to divide up the ranch, and so as we look at the how it was divided using the estate planning tool of a limited family partnership, all 4 of us had an undivided roughly 20% interest in the ranch. And so when we did that, and when Mom and Dad 3 years ago said, all right, we're going to divide up the ranch, my first thinking was, okay, we're going to get out the ranch map and we're going to draw lines to see one of these days who will get what. But it was very different. And Mom and Dad said, no, we're going to divide this ranch up and let you guys run it. We're going to divide it among you, and we want you guys to live your dreams like we've lived ours. And I'll tell you, my parents are very selfless and very loving and very giving to do that. They had built up earnings and savings to continue living, but they said they want to pass the ranch on while they are enjoying good health, where they can watch us live our dreams. And then my dad said, all right, we're going to, the farming is more, the oldest sister was more into the farming side, and we're going to let her have the farming. And then my mom put her foot down, and she said, Rob, we're not going to do it that way. That we're giving this ranch to these kids. Let's let them decide who gets what. And so with that, they said, y'all meet without us, but we'll be here if you need us. And we met once a month. We began we set aside one day a month, and we began every meeting with a prayer. And we started by deciding, all right, what is the value of the ranch? And it was just the four of us. It wasn't the in-laws. It was just the four of us that were raised under one roof. We brought our spouses in later, but for the beginning, it was just the four of us. And I think that was helpful because, it's easier to work with and understand where someone is coming from when you've grown up under the same roof with the same rules. And so we did that. We started by looking at the ranch, and we had several different ranches, not all contiguous. We had them in different locations. So we decided to break them up into blocks of equal value. It wasn't always equal acreage, but equal value to the acreage, which included the homes and facilities, equipment, and so on. We didn't hire an appraiser to do that. Not saying that wouldn't be a good idea, but it worked out fine. We worked through that situation and agreed to values. We agreed that it would be 4 equal values and dividing the ranch property up into 4 parts, with the assumption that any of us would be happy with any of those 4 parts of the ranch. And that worked really well. And it was interesting. My older brother, Rob A., as we got working down towards the end and dividing up those parcels of land, he said, if anybody gets exactly what they want, then it's probably not fair. And I thought that was a really good observation from him. There are a lot of tools, and as we look at estate planning tools, I look at it kind of like this slide, in that we don't have to change. We can keep using what our families have used for years, but the reality is utilizing the tools of the trade that we have available to us today can help us get where we're going. As you look at our family business, kind of back up here, give you a big overview. We had a cow-calf, including, that was both commercial and seed stock, a stocker cattle division, a wildlife operations, and farming division. As we looked at it, and as we look at the 4 of us coming back, and here's one thing that my parents did for each of us. They said, when you graduate from high school, you can go do whatever you want to. And if you want to come back to the ranch, they said, well, you graduate from high school, you can do whatever you want, but you have to pay for it. And we're going to give you a couple of cows right now, and we'll help you market those cows, but you make the breedings, and these are your cows, and you need to learn to earn and work and save and make wise investments. They said when you come back if you want to come back to the ranch, you can come back in one of 2 ways. But first, you have to go somewhere else for at least 2 years, whether that's a trade school, a college, military, something. Work somewhere else for a couple of years because we think it's healthy. So we did that, and then all 4 of us came back. I'm the youngest of 4, but all 4 of us came back to the ranch, and they said, you can come back as an employee and work for the family business, or you can come back with a business plan to grow the family business Because if you're going to bring another family back, we need to make sure it's big enough to feed another family. And so as we came back, we did that. And the way that transition usually went is that we had Dad's responsibilities, and then he would pass some responsibilities on to us. Most often it was things that he saw that were interests of ours and maybe not necessarily interests of his. And so he would utilize our strengths, our passions, but realizing that sometimes the things that we got to do weren't the most favorable things to do. And Kelly and I came back to the ranch. We worked for the family business for $1,600 a month for 16 years and as part of the family business. And then as we grew, we took those different segments, and each of the four of us came back, and we grew the family business into larger cow-calf operation with my older brother, with a larger farming operation with my oldest sister, feed yards, onto a variety of different things that we grew the business. And so depending on how many are in your family, I think it's important to use the gifts you've been given. And, you know, I'm guessing your family's like ours in that we're not all have the same interest. And yet as we look at our kids, sometimes we want to go, man, I wish they had similar interests. But it's, you know, it's worked out to be a great blessing that they don't have all the same interests. Because those tug of wars in families, and I would say that many of us on this call tonight would say that unfortunately we've seen way too many families that didn't do estate planning, that didn't bridge the generational gap, and as a result may have had to sell a big portion of the ranch to pay the death tax. And so we encourage you to be proactive on that and looking at dividing those things up. So this is my oldest sister, Betsy, and her family, my older brother, Rabe, and their 7 children, my older sister, Marianne, they've got 5 children, and an older picture of Kelly and I with our 2 boys that are now both college age. And so with that, we do want to share with you things about wherever you are in the involvement, in the management, and the ownership of your family business. There will be challenging times. I don't think there's any two ways about it. And you'll suffer through blizzards and fires and challenges of multitude of kinds, through drought, but it will rain again. And it may rain too much at times. But getting that fresh start means working through those challenging times to get to the good times. I will say this. My parents have been very progressive when it comes to generational transfer. And I don't know what it's like to divide a family business while grieving the loss of loved ones, of parents. I'm thankful that I don't know that yet. And I'm thankful because this wasn't necessarily an easy project, but I can't imagine what it would be like while going through the grieving process. And so I'm thankful, and as my wife said, be able to ask them questions. And they were there to be that counsel. I'm glad that Dad was still in the saddle and Mom was there when we could ask questions over the several months that we took to divide the family business. But I'd rather do it with him in the saddle than to not have him around. Ranching never has been a great way of life, as Elmer Kelton said, but I do believe it's a great way to raise a family. And, that's one of the great things about the lifestyle that we've chosen to live. There are a lot of things that Kelly and I could have done and made a lot more money, but I don't know a better way to raise a family than what we did. And so Kelly and I are blessed with 2 sons. Kelly, you want to tell them a little bit about our boys? I was afraid you'd do that. All right. We have 2 boys. Lanham, this is him at age 6. He wrote this on the back of one of his homework papers. And it really, I think, shares the story of how we've tried to raise our boys with boots on the ground, working and as an active part of our family business since they were old enough to be a part of it. Tucker there on the left as a youngster with a couple of his cousins And some things I'll share with you is when I came back to the ranch, we had 7 different breeds of cattle, and we were calving 9 months out of the year. We've changed that a lot since I've came home. We're now marketing 3 breeds of cattle, and we AI every cow and do embryo transfer. But our calving season's about 45 days, and so now I take that back. Our calving season is 70 days, and so we synchronize an AI breed 3 times. And that's a lot better than the 9 months of AI breeding that we did when I was growing up. So I challenge you to find the 3 things that you do best, that you're passionate about, and focus on those things and don't get too strung out. Don't get too carried away with too many things. Now, one of the things that I want to share is a strategy that the Gardner family in Kansas shared with us years ago, and that coming back to the ranch was not a birthright, but a work right. And that we needed to learn from the ground up every part of the business, and that meant working on that ranch. Now, I want to share with you a little bit about our boys. This is Tucker Brown. Tucker, multi-sport athlete, involved in showing heifers, doing everything. The only single player in the state of Texas to be named All-State Player of the Year in both football and basketball. Went on to win the state championship in football and played college basketball, and I may let Tucker tell a little bit more about him. His younger brother, Lanham, all-state golfer, as well as all-state quarterback and winning a state championship in football. And they both love horses and both won a state championship in golf. Both love horses, both love ranching, but in different ways. What we have tried to really instill in our boys are these 4 things. And I think it's the same that's been handed down in our generation for many years. And these are 4 points that I think are vital for us to teach our children. 1, teach them how to work. If they'll work, they won't go hungry. Teach them how to earn a living. Teach them how to save what they earn and how to make wise investments. That's what our parents taught us. Both our boys are paying 100% of their college right now, and Tucker's headed to the TCU Ranch Management Program in August. But as we look at it, you know, these 5 pair of boots could be boots off your place just as well as it is off ours. A variety of ages, and the key is, you know, we have tried to make it where our kids work alongside. Not behind, not too much in front, but alongside so they could learn the way. And as they've done that, they've grown, and they've been a part of the business in a lot of different ways. It's a picture of Tucker here with some of our Red Angus cows, but we do want to press on towards a goal to win the prize for which God has called us heavenward. And I do believe that is the focus that has helped our family through many years. Lanham there, 19, working on the Wagon Hound Ranch this summer in Wyoming. But working side by side with our boys, along with our crew, has been an important part of our business as they've learned it from the ground up in all aspects and all parts of the business. We've tried to teach them the cowboy code, tried to teach them right from wrong, how to work, earn, save, and invest. Kelly, you want to tell them a little bit about this? No? Well, I'll share with you a little bit. Our youngest son, Lanham, loves showing ranch horses, and he had the #1 high money-earning horse in AQHA Versatility this year, and this past year, coming home from the show in Amarillo, he fell asleep. And he lost his horse. Thankfully, he is still here with us. Because, you know, as we look at it, the police said this was the worst accident they'd ever seen anybody walk away from. But by the grace of God, he is still with us today. He had a bruise from where the seatbelt went across his chest. You know, again, it goes back to what Mom taught us in that love above all else. And what a blessing it is to continue to have both our boys and raise them up, because fighting over things is sure not worth it as I look at it. Love above all else. Mom taught us this, to be able to accept the things that we cannot change, but to have the courage to change the things that we can. Sometimes the hardest part is having the wisdom to know the difference. I'm going to pass it to Kelly here for a little bit to talk a little bit about some of our strategies and beliefs. She'll be on in just a little bit. I want y'all to have lots of questions for her and Tucker. In fact, Tucker, let's start right here, if you will. Tucker, if you'll come on, I'm going to share a few more slides. And that is, one of the things that I think is important is to keep it fun. That we all got to work, and I tell our crew, we're going to work hard, we're going to work long, we're going to get a lot done. But I think it's real important to keep it fun. No matter what we're doing, this is a picture of my grandfather on the polo team at Texas A&M in 1920s. And his dad died while he was in college, and he came home to run the ranch, but he taught the cowboys how to play polo. And they would trail their horses on weekends 65 miles to go and play polo with against other teams. Keeping it fun, I think, is important. Today we do it with ranch rodeos and with hunting and a variety of things that, keeping it fun, I think, is real important as we move forward, even when we get into some deep waters. Philosophically, y'all probably played the game. If you step on a crack, you break your mother's back. And thinking of that, what I challenge you to do is to think about, when you play that game or you watch your kids play that game, where is our focus? Where do we tend to look? We tend to look at the cracks, the imperfections, the flaws, the breaks, instead of focusing on where we want to land. And I did a research project one time with a group of kindergartners, took half the class and taught them to focus on the open place, where they wanted to land, where they wanted to be. And it was amazing how much further those students could go on a tile floor and step where they wanted to step instead of stepping on the crack where they did not want to be. And I'm confident it's because of focus. There are a lot of tools that we have today, and it's important to use the tools that we have. And I'm gonna pause right here. Tucker, if you would share a few things from your perspective as a 22-year-old college graduate, what it was like growing up on the R.A. Brown Ranch, and I would maybe even things that you would do different as you move forward. But Tucker, I'm going to hand it to you for a minute.
Thanks, Dad.
Yes, sir. We can hear you. Go right ahead.
All right. Just growing up on the ranch was a great blessing, and a lot of the times I always heard that people never really realized what they had until it was gone, and I really believe that now because I noticed that whenever I left for college. Did I like being on the ranch? Yes. Did I love being on the ranch? Yes. But I didn't realize how much I had learned and how much I had learned to love my family and my friends and the people I worked with until I left. And went to college in Lubbock, away from the ranch, 3 hours, just far enough away to be by myself and to learn more by myself. And I look back then and see the lessons I learned from cleaning the water troughs. As mad as I was at my dad for making me clean those, what I learned from those and the leadership ability and being able to go against adversity and still being able to get things done. And like Donald had said earlier, just how some things we do, we're not going to like it, but the fun that I learned to have during those times has come with me a long ways. And it helped me get through college, getting through the tough tests and getting through the times with no sleep. And now that I'm getting closer and closer to preparing to come back home, the reality is I've learned more things that I actually learned when I was in high school. I learned that I learned them then rather than in college. And so that has made me a lot more excited to come home because my view of home is a lot more open and willing to learn. Being raised in the small town of Throckmorton with 900, I thought everybody lived that way. And so moving out and into the bigger city, it just made me more and more excited to be able to come back home and be a part of something like this and moving forward. Did I come from a great place? Yes, but I want to keep it that way moving on into the future. Anything else, Dad? What else?
Thanks, Tucker. This is Kelly, and I do have a voice, and Donald asked me to say a couple of words, but I thought he was doing such a good job that I couldn't, that I didn't want to interrupt him a little bit ago, but the slide that we have now is just an opportunity for you to take a look after it's over. Hold on here just a second. I've got a little bit of an echo. Okay, hopefully that's better. The slide that we have up right here, this past year we were fortunate to be asked by the Texas Beef Council to be a part of a project that they've been doing in terms of remaking, maybe just redesigning the face of beef in our state. And the exercise itself was probably as meaningful to Donald and I as anything we've done in a long time. They brought a movie crew here from Hollywood that does documentaries, and basically they wanted to do a few short films that they could feature on their website and to tell the story of beef and to tell the story of ranching. The unique thing about it was that as Donald and I prepared for this week that they were going to spend with us, we were kind of tongue-in-cheek. We were beefing up on our facts, about the nutritional value of beef and the things that we wanted to share and the things that we've always enjoyed sharing about the value of beef and how we as are stewards of our land and all the positive things that that we as producers know that need to be shared out in the communities. The unique thing about this project was we got in our interviews and they started asking us questions that had nothing to do with the things we thought. They were questions about our family and about where we gained our perspective and about what our compass was and how we worked with our families, and stories from our childhood all the way through. I know one of the questions that really affected me was the question about what would I do if the boys don't come back to the ranch. And it was probably the first time that I ever really had thought about it, but bottom line was, in the end, we had an opportunity to visit with the producer, and he said, have you watched American Sniper, the movie? And I said, well, yes, of course, I loved it. And he said, you probably loved it, though, because you connected with the characters. You didn't connect with the characters because you'd had a husband that went off to war. You connected at a level with the wife, the spouse, the storyline about her husband. And I was like, yeah, that's it. We connected in the details. And so he just really encouraged us through this exercise that we'd been through about that's where we need to share as ranchers. That's where we need to share is at the level of family, because that's where people can connect with us best. And so even though we can't show this video today, I think there'll be a link that you can find it. Where will it be, Donald?
Texas Beef Council website.
Texas Beef Council website under Texas Stories has the video, and I would invite you to go look at it because it's just a well done piece. It's also on our website, rabrownranch.com. So anyway, I'm going to hand the phone back to Donald, but just a neat story about really telling the family story and connecting in the details.
as we look in the rearview mirror, you know, what I hope is that Kelly and I can look back in the rearview mirror like my parents are now and say, you know, we didn't do everything right, but hopefully we make more right decisions than we do wrong ones, and that we instill character in our children and create a quality of life and a sustainable business. I think some key points as we wrap up is this was shared with me years ago, and I think it has a lot of wisdom in that don't let what you want cause you to use bad judgment. You know, when you're trying to divide up a family business, sometimes you don't know if you're going forward or backward or if it's heads or tails. But getting that conversation started, I think, is very important, because the reality is I went to a dear friend's funeral today, and from dust we were created, and to dust we shall return, and that we aren't going to live forever. And I know it's not fun to talk about that point in life, but I think it's important to start that conversation and pray that it works great for you. We're going to close with this story, and then we'll open it up for questions. But when our boys were small, Kelly and I lived in town, and the ranch headquarters about 5 miles away. And Tucker, who's on the line with us tonight, a lot of times when he was about 4 years old that year, he would go back to the ranch with me after I'd go home for lunch, and then the afternoon he would go back to the ranch with me, and he would work with me side by side and do what Dad was doing. And I loved those times. And each day when we would come home, especially in the in the shorter days of the year, sometimes even in the longer ones, it was dark when we were headed back home, probably like many of you. And there's a little hill at the edge of town, and we'd top that hill, and Tucker would look up and say, "Dad, there's Throckmorton." Every time we'd top that hill, see the lights, regardless of what direction from town we were coming in from, he'd say, "Dad, there's Throckmorton." One day we took a trip and went about 30 miles away, and Kelly was in the front with me and both boys in the back, and we're driving to go about 30 miles to another town with a single flashing red stop sign, or flashing red light, just like ours. And we topped the hill at the edge of that neighboring community, and Tucker looks up from the back seat and goes, "There's Throckmorton." I just smiled, didn't say a word, but I watched him in the rearview mirror as we drove into that small town and pulled up to that one flashing red light. And he had this real confused look on his face as he looked from side to side, and he finally said, "Dad, we're lost at home." And we've laughed about that many times. But our hope is that, what we believe is that we have many opportunities ahead of us, and that this world will change, and we'll have different leaders. We will have different challenges to face as we move forward in this industry. My hope is that we're proactive in keeping the ranch in the family and the family in the ranch, so that we don't find ourselves at some point in time in a very different industry, lost at home. With that, Josh, we'll turn it back over to you, or Amber, turn it back over to you.
Thank you to our presenters this evening, Donnell, Kelly, and Tucker Brown. We greatly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. As we move into our question and answer session, I want to invite everyone to the upcoming 2016 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting being held July 13th through 16th in Denver, Colorado. This is a great opportunity to hear more in-depth information on current issues and opportunities in the as well as help chart the course for our future. For more information, please visit www.b.org. We hope to see you there. Now I will turn it over to Sarah Arp with NCBA to moderate our question and answer session. Thank you again for participating in the webinar tonight, and thank you again to Donald, Kelly, and Tucker. Sarah?
Thank you, Amber. Just to kind of start the Q&A, if you want to type your questions into the question chat box, I'll facilitate it and direct it, the questions to the Brown family. Also, as another friendly reminder, we will have a survey at the end of this webinar. You will receive a link. We appreciate any feedback we can get for future programming, as well as any opportunities that we can improve our educational content. First and foremost, I'll go ahead and ask a question that was sent earlier. What is the #1 thing that Donald would recommend in the family starting this process?
That is a great question, and I'm going to say this. Some of the best conversations that I remember with my dad and I were on road trips. When we didn't have an opportunity to find something else to do, and especially road trips where now you don't have cell phone coverage. Now you can still get on the phone, but those road trips where it was just he and I in the truck, headed somewhere, and I remember another time was at a time where we had a fire, and he and I were on night watch for the fire, and that it was an all-nighter, and one of the ways we kept each other awake was to challenge each other with thoughts about where to from here, and what's the future, and what's your vision, and where do you see this ranch 20 years from now, and how can I help us get it there? Some of those questions can be those leading questions that help get the process started. And I know not every parent wants to talk about those things, but I'm thankful that my parents were, and hopefully some questions like that will help. I'm going to let Kelly put a few thoughts on this as well.
The only thing I would just add is that it seemed to me with Donald's, I've just seen, growing up in agriculture, have seen plenty of not just ranching but farming, and it's probably that way for all family businesses. It's a hard topic to begin to converse about, and typically it doesn't happen as easily as what Donald explained, and I hope we didn't make it sound like it was just easy and it all laid out there. I think there was just a lot of love, and I think there was a lot of prayer, and I think mainly it was Donald's mom and dad insisting that conversation start, and I think it was then their children who insisted on going through with the conversation and putting aside some of their selfishness, and that's just real easy. I think that was one of the smartest things, was not to involve us wives and husbands, the in-laws, in the process, because through the conversations that they had, they were able to meet each other at a level without involving a little more complexity with the wants and desires of their spouses. So I'm not sure that we know the answer about how it begins, but it begins around that family dinner table is where I think it begins, and it probably began a long time before I was in the picture here.
Thank you. Another question that we have is, did you ever use an outside moderator or someone outside of the family to lead a succession planning conversation?
Another really good question. I think that can be very helpful, and there are some really good sources for that. University of Nebraska has some really good moderators, and we did use a moderator back early on, not in the last 3 years, but I'm going to say the moderator we used 20 years ago, as mom and dad started kind of laying the groundwork, was an essential part of getting the process started and helping us ask those questions and address the issues. Yeah, they led us into the limited family partnership and helped us ask those questions and address those issues that are pretty uncomfortable as a sibling or as a child to speak of your parents. So I think finding one of those, I would encourage you to Google it, research it, find someone that's in that business, and at least you go see them. And because not every family member is interested in using a moderator, but I think it's important to do so to prepare yourself to help the process if the rest of the family is not interested in doing so.
All right, we have time for one more question here, and maybe this is a joint question for Tucker and Donald, is with the generational gap and demands on time, how do you guys prioritize commitments outside of the ranch with volunteer leadership through a breed organization or an organization on the state level, as well as anything involved with engagement you've participated in with NCBA?
All right, I'll start, Tucker, and I'll let you jump in because he's had a very busy schedule as well, and the last 8 years in his life that has juggled lots of different activities, but always including leadership roles. That's something that our family has believed in for many years, that it's important to help enough others get what, as Zig Ziglar would say, if we help enough others get what they want, they'll help us all get what we need. And so when I came, Kelly and I were both national FFA officers, and so we spent a year traveling the country and saw a lot of neat things, had some really neat opportunities. When I graduated from college, I came home to the ranch, and because of that past experience, I had a lot of people wanting me to serve in leadership roles in our state breed association, national breed associations, NCBA, a variety of things. And I did some things like media training and things like that. But one commitment I made was to wait 5 years from the time I started back with the family business, to wait 5 years before I accepted a leadership role, because I felt like two leadership roles that were most important was, one, the leadership role as a husband and a father, and to get my family started off right before I found myself in a level of overcommitment, and then two, to also learn the family business, and before I got strung out with leadership roles. Now, since then, we've been very involved. Kelly served on the Red Angus Board of Directors for 9 years, president for 2 of those. I've served on strategic planning committees for NCBA on 2 different occasions. Go to summer conference, annual meeting. Now the board of directors of our state cattlemen's association, our Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers. Serve on the board of directors of the Beef Improvement Federation as the incoming president. So yes, I think it's very important to do that, and just started planning today a county cattleman. So from the local level through the region and state and national levels, to be using the skills and using the gifts that the Lord's blessed us with to be an active part of the solution, but balance that with family and balance it with work so that it is sustainable. I heard a definition last week of sustainability, and that is when it works for everybody. Tucker?
Like you said, Dad, the last 8 years for me have been very busy, and in high school, my parents helped me start my own registered herd, and that started with showing Red Angus heifers. And I would go to school, and after school I would have football practice, and after football practice I would have to come home and wash heifers rather than hang out with my friends, which I thought was child abuse at the time. But now I really see what it's given me and the hard work that I have put in and the things I've learned from it. But being able to be a part of so many things was stressful at times for me. And as I continued into college, I became the student body president of my university, and started my own business, and still am involved with the ranch and working at home when I have the chance to. And I'm gone from the ranch right now, working at another place, and thankful that they gave me the opportunity to be able to join here. But just the time that I've had to be able to have leadership positions and also still be a part of the ranch has been a huge blessing, and especially with the with the science and technology that we have today has really helped me be a part of it, and probably been more of a part than a lot of people ever imagined 30 years ago. And so being in those leadership positions have really helped me. I've heard it said that you have to spend some money to make some, and I think that's what these leadership positions have done for me, is I've learned so much and been able to bring them back to use for my registered herd and work at the ranch.
Well, thanks again for everyone who was able to join us. We're going to conclude this evening's call. As I mentioned before, please look out for the survey to give us feedback and to how we can improve our educational programming and content. And if for those of you who were able to pass this along, we will have this on the beefusa.org site in a recorded version. And we hope you all have a great evening.
Sarah, thank you very much, and we encourage everybody to go watch that video. It'll help with answer some of the questions and follow up from tonight. Blessings to you all. Proud to be a part of the program.